Okay, so we're still working on our Faceless Man, and as you remember in the last video, we had to work on the seams around the leg here and his arms up here. And I was concerned how to do it because I didn't want the filler to ruin the texture of the figure. So I didn't have anything on my bench at the time that I could use. So I went out to Hobby Lobby and I found this tester's putty. Okay, never used it before, but I decided to try it. And with it, I've gotten these tips. Okay, I got them for, it says $1.99. I think after discount I got them for like $1 or so, just over $1. And was able to go in and just dab, just dabbing, and filled in his arms. All right. And then I was able to do the leg, and then sprayed him, and then everything looked good. But then what I found out, I don't know if you can see this here, is after I sprayed him, I see this big seam line going up and down his leg. Alright, I think there was another one somewhere. Oh yeah, right here in his neck. You can see a seam line there now. So again, the question is how to take care of that. Now I thought about taking my blade and just kind of hacking into it, but that really wasn't working. So I retreated back to my putty with the tip, and basically what I'm trying to do is fill up, dib-a-dab the seam line itself and make the putty overwrite the seam, or go up to it actually, because what the seam is to the joint where it's not level. So if I kind of build up on the low side, hopefully it'll make it go away. Now right now that's pretty obvious, but what'll happen is as it dries, it gets a little messy, and then when we coat it with the primer again, it should make it invisible, kind of like it did with the seams in his joints of his arms and shoulders and his leg. Okay, so again, we're going to go up here to find the low side. You can see that, just kind of dabbing it in there, and again trying to build up the low side of the seam. This way, when we paint it, it won't be visible. So that's where we are. So turned out to be very inexpensive. I was kind of nervous about having to buy something, have something shipped in expensive, and like I said, found this Hobby Lobby. The tips are really good, very helpful. You can use those on glue also. Really gets in to those tight spots, keeps the amount of putty that you're putting on your figure to a minimum. So let that dry. The other spot I forgot about was right here on the elbow. You can see it's very soft, smooth. So I'm going to try to use the putty, texture it to make up the difference. Let's see. Pretty good actually. It's going to be hard to tell really until we get it primered, but yeah, that looks not too bad. Yeah, not too shabby. All right, but he's coming along. Yeah. If I put him in a top hat, paint his face silver and sparkly, put him in a top hat, he could be from Lost in Space. Yeah. Hell, maybe that's where Irwin Allen got the idea from when he saw this really bad movie. I could put that in my TV show. But anyway. Alright. Enough of wasting your time. I'll be right back. Hey guys, welcome back to the finale on the 2018 Halloween build for Sci-Fi Fantasy. What you're looking at here is the Curse of the Faceless Man. This is based on the 1958 movie of the same name. It was a really, they call it a B movie, but it was really like more like a J movie. It was really low down the list. It was a horrible black and white movie, American made, kind of somebody trying to make their version of The Mummy, which had been done many times at that point. But it starred Richard Anderson was one of the big stars in it. If you remember Richard Anderson from the $6 Million Man fame, he was Oscar Goldman. I believe he actually recently passed away. But anyway, it's a very obscure piece, I think, obscure movie, but I really kind of like it, as bad as it is. But this is our man. Really not much to it. It took me a lot longer than it should have, but that was really just me having some motivation issues. But you can see here we've got the base. This is all resin. The base is a mix of like, supposed to be like steps, stone steps, probably somewhere in Pompeii. You've got in it some skulls. You've got the nameplate made into it, which I think is pretty cool. And then you got the Faceless Man himself, which is supposed to be covered in ash. Let's see if I can get this to scroll nice and easy. It's supposed to be covered in ash like the victims of Pompeii. I believe he was some sort of guard to a princess of the time, is what the way the story goes, and he comes to life to protect some jewels that were excavated or something like that. I don't know. Check it out. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. But anyway, the build was all done with craft acrylics, except for the base coat of primer. I had to do some work for seams when it came to like his in here to his shoulders, because these were separate pieces here and here. So they had to be filled in, and it had to be very careful not to lose the texture. As you can see, the texture that comes with the figure is actually pretty cool. So I had to be very careful about filling in these seams and not losing that. The other area that had it done was down here on his leg, and actually you can still kind of see a shadow line of where his leg was attached, but it's definitely not anywhere near what it was. But I probably could have done better, obviously. There was also some seam lines throughout the figure here and there that I had to take care of, but all that was relatively easy to handle. And then what I did is I coated the whole entire thing with primer. Yeah, it was all done in primer, gray primer actually. I used what is it? I used cheap primer, whatever gets it coated. Here we go, Duplicolor primer sealer. That's what I used, the gray color. I used that, fixed the things that had to be fixed, and then everything else on top of it was craft acrylics. For the base, you know, we just made up some grays and put a dirt wash in it, some browns mixed into it to highlight it. The dirt was made up, and the skulls and everything, and then I painted the nameplate here as best as I could to kind of match what the movie showed, the movie poster. And then what I did is I used silly putty, put it over top of this, and dull coated the whole thing when I got it to where I was happy. Just a cautionary thing: if you'd never use silly putty as a masking agent. It works really well. I've never had problems with it till today. Today was the first time I put the silly putty on where I wanted to cover, which was all good. And then I sprayed it with my dull coat, Tester's dull coat, and let it dry. Not a big deal. But when I picked it up later, that silly putty was disintegrating. It was breaking down. It was real slimy, and it took actually a challenge to get the remnants out of the crevices here. But whenever I've done it with paint, I haven't had a problem. So just something to beware if you ever do it in the future. Also, the parts were washed before it was coated with, I used a little bit of this And shoe polish, brown shoe polish was another thing I used over the dirt, and the skull area was all shoe polish. Then, coming to the Faceless Man himself, what we did for him, again, he was done in the base coat of gray, which I was very happy with. But I just doing that wasn't enough. I needed to do something else. I did some research online looking at the photos of the victims of Pompeii, and there was all kinds of actual colors in there. There was grays, there was whites, there was bone color, because some of them the bones were coming through. There was all kinds of colors. And then I matched that up with watching the movie itself, and even though it was black and white, you could still see the close-ups when they did the close-ups of the creature. There was different tones and textures in it, and you could see some were grays and some were whites and stuff like that. So that's what I was trying to do. So what I did with the overall gray in place, I then took Craft Acrylics Americana Dolphin, and then I did this acrylic white, what is it? It doesn't really matter, but it's white. Wicker white. I mixed them together, and then using my fan brush, okay, I dry brushed the whole thing, and I'm pretty pleased at the way it came out. I mean, you can still see the grays underneath it. I think it looks pretty good. Then, after that was done, again, from everything I've seen, there was all kinds of colors in there. So I did different mixtures of colors, browns, as you can see on his chest and on the side of his face. There's some browns and tans. I even have some greens in there, little subtle greens. And then what I really was keen on was his leg area and his hands, because of the lighter color that he was walking through the sometimes he was in the woods and the jungle of wherever the show took place, I forget. He would be dirty, so I just kind of dirtied up his lower half a little bit more. I dirtied up his arms and his hands more, a little bit of his chest, just to give it some bits of points of interest, you know. Just dirtied him up a little bit. It might be a little hard to see with the lights and everything, but they're there. I'll have pictures later at the end. I'll show you. But that's him. Not much to it. The good thing about this, I didn't have to worry about painting eyes. Eyes are always a challenge. But that was it. So that's my 2018 Halloween build. I hope you enjoyed it. And till next time, be strong.